Hello, I'm Graham Hutton, and I'm Chairman of Aid to the Church in Need in the United Kingdom. I'd like to read to you today chapter 9 from the Child's Bible, Rules of Life. Hear, O Israel, the Lord is your God, the Lord and no other. And so you must love him with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your strength. When you besiege a town, you must not cut down its trees. You may eat the fruit from the trees, but you must not cut them down. Do not wrong the widow or the orphan. If you oppress them and they call out to me, I will come to their defense. If you see someone else's ox or sheep straying, you must not stand idly by. You must lead it back to its owner. If a poor man is working for you, you must not keep him waiting for his wages. Pay him his due on the very same day. When you have taken your first harvest from your first olive tree or from your vineyard, leave what remains on the trees and the vines for the poor to gather. Do not ill-treat the strangers who live in your land. Give them the same rights as you have yourselves. Love them as you love yourselves. And do not forget that you were strangers in the land of Egypt. I, the Lord your God, tell you this. Do not speak evil about the deaf man who cannot defend himself. Do not put obstacles in the way of the blind man, which might cause him to stumble. Do not bear hatred for your brother in your heart. Reprimand your neighbor, otherwise you yourself will be guilty. Do not take revenge, and do not bear a grudge against anyone. Love your neighbor as yourself. This was a particularly beautiful passage, wasn't it? It's all about love, and it's all about how God tells us we should love in order to live as Christians. We've heard many examples before in the Old Testament about God giving us life instructions. In the story of Cain and Abel, we were told about the importance of always doing the right thing. And in the previous chapter, God gave the law to Moses on Mount Sinai. He gave him the 10 Commandments. And today, God gives us more detailed examples of how we should love. When Jesus was asked what was the most important of all the commandments, he said the first and most important commandment is to love God, and the second is to love your neighbor. And this passage today was all about this, wasn't it? We started with that phrase, you must love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your strength. And we ended with the phrase, you must love your neighbor as yourself. But our neighbor isn't just the person who lives next door to us, not just our families and our friends and the people we find easy to love. Our neighbor is every person that we come across at any point in our lives, any person we can touch. And in this passage, we're given lots of examples about who our neighbor is and who are the people that we should take care of. And very often you see that they're the underprivileged, the people who have less than we have, people who are less fortunate than we are. So we have the example of the widow and the orphan. We're told not to oppress the widow and the orphan. The widow and the orphan come up a lot in the Old Testament. They're examples, they stand for people who are deprived, unfortunate, in need. So the widow who has lost her husband, the orphan who has lost his or her parents, these are people who are in need. And we're told not to oppress them. We're told that God will stand by them and look after them, and we should stand by them and look after them. We have the stranger, not to oppress the stranger. The stranger is the foreigner, the person living in our midst who doesn't belong to us, who comes from outside of our community. In particular, today we might think about refugees, so many refugees in the world today. And often These people are not easily accepted, but we must accept them. We must love them. We must go out of our way to help them, to welcome them, to be kind to them. And God reminds his people Israel that they themselves were once exiles in the land of Egypt. So how much more should they welcome and accept foreigners in their midst? And we're also given this example of the ox and the sheep. When the ox and the sheep are seen to be straying, we must go out of our way to return them to their owner. We mustn't just stand idly by, as it says. So it's not just that we have to treat people in the right way when we come across them, but we actually have to go out of our way, take steps towards them. When we see things going wrong, there's nothing that we could think have got nothing to do with ourselves, we actually have to go out of our way to put those situations right. So these are all examples of the people that we can love and we must love for God's sake. So could I ask you to ask yourself 3 questions as you think more about this? First of all, about God. How do we show that we love God? This important commandment to love God. What do we do to show that? Secondly, who are the people in our lives that we should view as our neighbours, the people we can go out of our way to help? And thirdly, what are the things we can do for them? What positive steps should we take in order to show that we love our neighbour as ourselves? Thank you.